Hi everyone, I'm Rick Beato. Today's Everything Music is called Orchestration for Pros. What we're going to do is we're going to break down a cue from the movie Toy Story 3 called The Claw, which was composed by Randy Newman and orchestrated by Jonathan Sachs. We're going to deconstruct it, we're going to look at all the parts and the full orchestration. So let's begin. We're going to take it from the middle of the cue. There's a huge climax scene. It's really the climax of the entire movie. And I'm going to play a little bit of the build-up into the section where we're going to start. And the part we're going to start on is a big, fat E-flat Lydian chord over B-flat. Check it out. Let's take a look at it. I've done a mock-up of it, talk about these different sections and what is going on, and play you the different sections. So let me play you my mock-up of it. The first thing that you need to do with your orchestration is have a melody to orchestrate. Now, this cue that we're going to deconstruct today has a melody that goes through it, but it has many other supporting orchestration components that we're going to break down as well. Let me play it again for you. So once again, this is The Claw. It's a cue from the climax scene in Toy Story 3 by Randy Newman, but orchestrated by Jonathan Sachs. Right here. Okay, so we're going to start from the E-flat Lydian chord here. My first video on orchestration was how to orchestrate a chord, and it was based on the opening chord to Star Wars. Well, we're going to talk about how this chord is being orchestrated first, and I want to talk about the melody that follows that. So, I remember hearing it the first time I saw the movie. The kids got really scared and nervous, and this is right where this claw comes down and saves Woody and the gang, and the kids were so terrified that they were gonna get burned up in the fire, and when it hit that music was just amazing. It blew me away, and I remember the kids' reaction to it. And I said to Dylan, I said, of course. I didn't say it then when we were watching it the first time, but one of the 20,000 other times we watched it, I remember saying to Dylan, "What chord is that?" He said, "Oh, that's E-flat Lydian. That's B-flat, E-flat, A." And I went to the piano, and he said, "With B-flat and the bass." And I said, "That's it." So, right there, and then he resolves it. Then we moved into the key of D major, but it's over A, and then that is the melody. Let's listen to it again. So, once you have your melody and your framework, then the orchestration begins. How do you actually orchestrate these chords? Okay, I've got my glasses on, so we know we're getting down to some serious learning here. We're going to start with the trumpet section on the first chord. We're going to build the opening chord and then the entire section, but we're going to start with the trumpet because the trumpet carries the melody. So the first voicing that the trumpet plays on the E-flat Lydian chord is this. It's divided into 4 parts, so there's 4 trumpets, and it's A, B flat, E flat, A, B flat, E flat, A. So it's got the attention note here. that sharp 4 is represented twice in 2 different octaves, as you can see from this. Okay, so let's listen to the trumpets by themselves through the cue. So there's a lot of really interesting things in this part of the arrangement. So right there it breaks into, it splits from when you hear the D-E in the melody, and then all of a sudden we break into chords. So this is one of the things that you have to think about when you're orchestrating, is that there are going to be times where you have to where you're going to have single notes, you're going to have chords, you're going to, especially with a 4-part trumpet section like this, listen. And we have that dissonance that you can hear on the, right here, right there. And right there we have that dissonance between the C sharp and the D. You can hear that, so C sharp D, F sharp A, which is a D major 7 sound in inversion. There's a lot of unexpected dissonances here in the trumpet part. And some of the other parts carry even more of the dissonances. You'll find more in the French horn and the trombones. In some of the inner parts that you'll find some more hidden dissonances. So once again, let's listen to it. And right there, it's really cool when you hear that. But you hear that. You hear that F sharp and G together, which is really unusual to hear. It gives it a little bit extra power, having that dissonance, that minor second in one section in the trumpets. Check it out again. Right here. Right here. And once again, we're ending on that C sharp D. Once again, having a half step within a section gives it an extra, some extra bite, and I think that's you'll start noticing that from section to section, how that's impacting the orchestration of the melody. Let's move on to the French horn next. So the French horns start out with an E flat major triad on that E flat leading chord. It's an inversion, so it's B flat, E flat, G. And what's cool about it is it interlocks perfectly with the trumpet. Here's the two together, listen. So you have B flat, E flat, G, and then the trumpet is right next to it with A, and then B flat, and then the high A there. So those voicings are completely interlocked right next to each other, as you can see on this. Now listen to the French horns through the rest of the cue. Now you'll notice that there's a lot of dissonances. This is very common in inner voices. You find this in the violas. You find this in anything that is a mid-range instrument. You'll find it happens in the woodwind sections, in the clarinet parts, or if you have sax, if you have a sax section. Anytime you have these mid-range instruments, they will carry a lot of the dissonances inside the chord. Okay, if you have the dissonances too far up in the top, especially when it's a trumpet-based melody, well, obviously the trumpets aren't going to carry that much of the dissonance because you want the melody to speak on its own. So you don't want to have a lot of close notes up there together that are going to make people be confused as to what the melody is. So this is carrying a lot of nice dissonances again. Once again, check it out and watch the score. Okay, now let's hear it with the trumpets together. Really cool. That's almost the bulk of the song. Everything else is kind of is additional supporting. Will play supporting roles and will add excitement in their own ways. The string part, the harp, the woodwinds that have more of color effects, as we'll call them. They're not really carrying the bulk of the melody. We'll see there's grounding when we get to the trombone section. You'll hear more of grounding. The main bulk of the orchestration is carried by the trumpets and the French horns for this part of the cue. Okay, next we have the trombones. The trombones are split into 4 different parts. It begins in tenor clef because we're up really high in the trombone range to give it that intensity. And the 3rd and 4th parts are playing octaves right here at the beginning. The 4th part being a bass trombone. So we have 3 trombones and a bass trombone. So that's the trombone section. And then the tubas are also divided where you're seeing that they're playing octaves. So here's what they sound like playing their part. So once again, just like the French horns, it's carrying a lot of dissonances in the trombone. I'll solo the trombone just for a minute so you can hear it. It's really cool because you hear the ba 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 ba, where you're in that line G, F sharp, F, F sharp. Now it's hidden inside the track. That's what gives it the intensity when you have those dissonances hidden down in the mid range like that. Let's listen to the entire brass section playing together. Now let's listen to it inside the track so you can hear it, what it sounds like with all the instruments combined. Okay, let's take a look at the string part. We're going to do this one section at a time. The string part is actually the most simple part, so take a look at it as I play my mock-up of it. Okay, so right there, you'll notice the arpeggio pattern that's being played. So it's a 16th note pattern that is basically going through arpeggios. The first arpeggio, the first pattern starts out. The first thing that we have is a Lydian major arpeggio, so then doubling in the B flat. And then another figure down on E flat major. So this is doubled between the violins and the violas. There's also a couple tremolo parts going on here. Here's one of the tremolo parts that goes like this. So now let's listen to the strings all together. notice the use of not only the tremolo in the beginning part between the cellos and basses and the second violins, but then you also have the trills coming in the first and second violins that come in bar 3 of it. And the tremolos and trills sound similar, but trills will add an extra intensity to the tremolo, or I should say in comparison with the tremolo. It's really a slightly different effect. When you're doing tremolo, you can't dig into the strings as hard as you can when you're actually just doing a trill, and you can get a lot more bite on it. Doing a tremolo, it's a very short motion, so you don't quite have the power in it. It's more of an effect than it is when you're using a trill. So this is a very interesting use of both tremolo and trills in there. Now let's listen to it inside the whole mix and see if we can hear some of these parts. Okay, the Woodwinds I'm going to play as a section, and one of the reasons is because it's completely a supportive part in this. It's played for effect. There's if you look at the piccolos and flutes, there are these triplet 16th notes in 6-note groupings that are staggered so that people don't run out of air when they're doing these trills, and so they sound like there's movement within the section. Also, you've got the bassoons are pedaling on the tonic, and then they start on B flat and then they move to A, and then you have a trill in the clarinets that are divided into 2 parts along with a, as you can see, the oboes are divided into 3 parts, the clarinets are divided into 2 with a bass clarinet, and then you have 2 bassoon parts, a bassoon and a contrabassoon. And here's what they sound like played together as a section. You can hear all those trills there together with the clarinet and the flutes. So that is strictly a supportive role and a way to just create an atmospheric. You can almost look at this as a pad, if you know what a pad is. Something that adds an ethereal atmosphere to it. Obviously, you want the entire orchestra playing here, because without it, even though it's a brass dominant part, you still want the other instruments playing to really get that maximum level. And there's really no benefit of them playing along with the melody, because it's not going to have the same weight. Let's listen to it again with the full mix and see if we can pick out some of these parts. Okay, that's it for the Woodwinds. Let's check out the percussion parts. Now, you also have your percussion parts. You have your cymbal swells, and you'll notice where they happen. So you have the timpani swell on the note A, and then you have a cymbal swell going on. So you notice the timpani swells will do a roll into a single hit. You'll have the cymbal swell that will be capped off with a crash, which is really common to add excitement to tracks. I mean, this is used, which is really the way that composers use percussion to add excitement, especially in these big sections of tunes. Those timpani rolls are what gives it that kind of underpinning of excitement, and then the crashes on the downbeat signals the listener that something's just happened. You know, it's those builds that really, those crescendos that really make the pieces happen. If you take the percussion away from the cue, it really loses its its power. Now take a look at the harp during this. There's a couple other auxiliary parts that I didn't actually get to program. I didn't think were as important. There's orchestral bells that are playing a triplet figure, as you can see. And also, on the downbeat of the original one, you'll hear, on the chord here, you can hear that there's a synthesized voice there, like a choir sound, but it's actually and it's playing that E-flat Lydian chord. That kind of gives it that choir effect, makes it sound bigger than life. When the claw is coming down to save them, it's gives it this kind of sound of angels coming to save them or something. It's Woody looks up at it, and all of a sudden it appears in a glow of light. It actually appears in a glow of light first, and that's what gets Woody's attention when he looks up. Interesting thing about this cue is that in the movie, there's no grand pause there. There are a couple spots where the soundtrack is different than the movie. My kids don't like the soundtrack version because there is that pause there. And they go right, because Woody is startled by the light coming down when the claw opens up, and he looks up, and they immediately go right to that E-flat Lydian chord. So unlike the recording here, which is from the soundtrack. There's a few other discrepancies actually from the soundtrack to the movie. There's a couple spots in here that are different because of the editing of the movie and just trying to tighten up these parts. If you look at the harp, you can see the scale that's being outlined that the glissando is being played over. So if you look at it, it says D, C, B flat, E flat, F, G. Well, what is that? Well, that's basically all the notes of E flat Lydian. Okay, so once again, that's in key. And then you'll see a little bit later on in the fourth bar, you'll see the C sharp and B flat being added to that. Well, that's because those notes are actually in some of the parts in the brass. Those are used as tension notes. So that, once again, adds the excitement. And then in the next section, we'll talk about this. As we get into the harp, I'm going to have to do a whole show on the harp itself, but I'm actually going to bring in a harpist to do this, to show what the techniques are and how to use the harp and how arpeggios. There's different types of arpeggios that are used, okay? You can play scales. There's many, many different ways that you can utilize the harp. Sometimes you'll have, in orchestral music, you'll have pieces that'll have two harps in them. I believe that one of the pieces that I talked about, I think the Planets, there's two harps in it because it has an expanded orchestra, and I think that there's two harp parts in it. But harp is a really effective instrument for this, and it cuts through the mix, and you always hear it. That's the one thing. It's like you may not hear those violin lines like that are being played, those 16th note lines in the kind of din of the whole super loud brass part, but the harp, for some reason, probably because it's a percussion instrument being plucked, actually is able to cut through the mix, and these kind of arpeggiated figures and scale figures add a lot of excitement that you don't realize to it. They kind of go right along with your tremolos and your timpani and your cymbal swells and your cymbal crashes. All those work together. And piccolos, you'll find in the wind section, John Williams especially will use, and you'll hear those really fast scalar lines that will go up and down and add these swells. And these are kind of instruments that are capable of these swells, but they're swells of melodic material. That's all for now. Please subscribe here to my Everything Music YouTube channel. And if you're interested in the Beato book, you can write me at rickbeato1@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.